2025 was not what I expected it to be. Although I watched more movies this year than I ever have before, there were more disappointments this year than the last few. I feel like most of our blockbusters sucked ass this year. A Minecraft movie felt like Warner Brothers saw the Super Mario Bros. Movie and said, just do that. And it worked. Right now, the corporate animated movie meta is to dig up an old treasure chest full of IP and just empty it onto a piece of paper. And then if you have time, just kind of jot down a story about, I don't know, fucking family, the importance of being yourself. Honestly, I didn't hate it. It was pretty funny at times. No roving bands of 8-year-olds burned down the theater I was in, so I guess I can't really complain. Mission Impossible. This franchise hit its peak, and then as soon as they decided to do a big 2-part finale, they fucked it up. As I've said before, stunts were incredible. Tom Cruise is trying to die on camera, and you can't convince me otherwise. But the plot? Incomprehensible. The other Mission Impossible movies are about like stopping terrorist attacks. I know that this AI villain is theoretically so much more menacing than that, but it makes the entire story feel so floaty and undefined. Like, this human bad guy is working for the AI? Does it pay him? Does it refer him to human resources because he won't stop eating its Chobanis in the break room? It just kind of saps the momentum of your story when all your villain dialogue is just monologues about how, haha, yes, the world will be so harmonious when it's finally in the grip of my master, Joe Jonas character AI.
Can a guy get some peace?
Karate Kid Legends. Now this is how you make a sequel no one asked for. I don't know how this fulfills the legacy of Mr. Miyagi, I'm just here for the karate. This rooftop karate tournament? Badass, very good fight choreography, and that's all you needed. How to Train Your Dragon was fine, perfectly fine, but if I did have one small gripe, it kind of felt like I had already seen just like a better version of this movie. Oh, I can see every scale on every dragon in 12K detail. Oh, I can finally reach out and pluck one of Stoic's beard hairs. Here's $600 million. Jurassic World Rebirth. A character in this movie looks directly down the barrel of the camera and says with pleading eyes, we were just trying to give the people what they wanted. I love it when the most lifeless corporate movies make corporations the villain. All corporations do is squeeze anything they can get their hands on for as much money as possible. Corporations, am I right, folks? Yeah! Here's $800 million. F1 was one of the only fun summer blockbusters, and it's 100% because Hans Zimmer's music has the ability to transform average movies into average movies that are fun to watch. Sure, the plot is pretty formulaic, but all the actual driving scenes are made 10 times more entertaining because of how good the music is. You hear the brass from Inception, you get the pizzicato strings from The Dark Knight. I went and saw the Hans Zimmer concert movie this year, and my appreciation for this man and his music has never been higher. Superman. I wasn't blown away by the plot. Not sure I understood the whole clone Superman subplot or like the black hole underneath this city, but I actually liked the tone of the movie a lot more than I was expecting. James Gunn has a very specific style that you can see very clearly in Guardians of the Galaxy and the Suicide Squad, and I was worried that an entire cinematic universe with that tone would get old very quickly, but a lighter, more hopeful Superman movie felt kind of nice. The cast was all really good, loved the visual style, loved the way it starts the story with a bunch of already established superheroes. A solid start to the DCU. Following the MCU this year was an absolute roller coaster. Brave New World. It's like Winter Soldier, but instead of fighting his childhood best friend brainwashed into working for the Nazis, he fights a clump of unfinished CGI and defeats it by reminiscing about how nice trees are to look at. Brave New World is every problem the MCU has had post-Infinity Saga rolled up into one hilarious garbage burrito. So Thunderbolts was a hugely reassuring movie to see after Brave New World. Like, oh, thank God, they do still know how to make good movies. But then Fantastic Four was so unbelievably boring, it was like, but do they though? You had such a fun aesthetic. You had a great cast. Your premise was that the two most influential people in the world have a magic baby, and a galactic supervillain threatens to eat the planet if they don't hand it over. This could have been so sick, and I'm honestly not 100% sure why it wasn't. They just made it really boring. Next year we get a new Spider-Man movie with John Bernthal Punisher, and then the first Avengers movie in 6 years with Robert Downey Jr., Doctor Doom, so it should at least be an interesting year. Wicked Part 2 was truly unbelievably bad. I actually liked Part 1. Part 1 is fun and it sweeps you along with fun songs and beautifully detailed visuals at a pretty brisk pace, except for this part at the Ozdust Ballroom, which made me feel like I was gonna die from organ failure before they would go anywhere else. Part 2 is like this grim, broody, somber snore fest. Fucking nothing happens in this movie. See, stage musicals leave a lot of room for plot holes because plot is only one small part of why people go to see musicals. They want good songs and that fun, campy musical vibe more than a groundbreaking story. but plot is kind of inherently the backbone of a movie. So when there's just gaping holes in your story, like why did they hate the talking animals? Or why doesn't anyone with magic use it to do anything consequential? Or what did Jeff Goldblum being her dad have to do with literally anything? It's hard to get past the feeling that maybe this should have just stayed a musical. There's no energy anywhere to be found here, and it all feels paper thin. Elphaba's revolution against the wizard consists of skywriting and disrupting the yellow brick supply chain, and then the road gets finished off screen 4 seconds later anyway. Glinda keeps wistfully reminiscing about the 4 experiences she's had with her best friend in the entire world. Fiyero is torn between 2 characters that he interacted with once before falling utterly in love with them. If we back up and look at this from the perspective of a stage musical, these issues are not issues. It makes sense that the musical wouldn't really depict the specifics of Elphaba's revolutionary actions. It's focused more on casting a very famous villain in a new light. All the love stories can confidently be constructed out of toothpicks and glue, because musicals are just kind of like that. Glinda and Elphaba's relationship can be construed in more of a time-lapse sense, allowing us to just fill in the gaps with the assumption that their friendship was very strong. But by stretching the story out to 5+ hours and showing Elphaba's story from the moment of her birth, you create the feeling of needing a much more coherent plot to make that runtime feel earned. Instead, we have characters of stage musical depth sort of just shuffling their feet for the extra 3 hours, doing absolutely nothing. And it totally undercuts the ending of the movie where everyone insists they have been changed for good, but it's kind of unclear how or why. Of course, the production design is incredible. Every set in this movie is amazing. Only 2 of the CGI monstrosities hurt to look at. The cast is excellent as well. Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande were perfect for this story. Their chemistry is kind of the only fun thing in this entire movie. Jonathan Bailey is tragically given absolutely nothing to do yet again. This man is a great actor. Please, stop writing him roles that are 1 ply thick. I don't know, it's just so wild to have been completely inundated for months with pink and green products on every shelf at the grocery store. Pink and green Comcast ads, pink and green cereal, pink and green Takis. And it was all leading up to the movie equivalent of drinking a glass of water for 2.5 hours. Sorry to everyone who liked this movie, which seemed to be like every single person. It is very pretty, and I hope John M. Chu gets to make whatever his heart desires next. But I would be happy to never watch part 2 again in my life. Rewatch Rogue One after finishing Andor, and this movie is pretty fun. Definitely one of the better Star Wars movies, but it's such an interesting piece of paradoxical cinematic universe geometry. The whole time watching this movie, I couldn't help but wonder what this movie would have looked like if it was written after Andor. Cassian in the movie is kind of just a blank piece of paper. If they had gotten to write him an ending that factored in everything he had been through in the show, dude, that would have been sick. But at the same time, without the success of Rogue One, there never would have been an Andor. Like, I think the craziest part about the success of Andor is that it very much seems like an accidental success of a Disney strategy that has failed every other time. The take an existing side character and give them a whole TV show method has not had a great win rate, but it's kind of Disney's only signature move at this point, and yet by applying the strategy to a character who really had no personality or history, serving only as a grizzled, experienced rebel to be like a foil for Jin's naive outsider, you kind of had an empty canvas to flesh out and explore a fascinating point in the Star Wars timeline, which by the way is another reason the show was so good. The point in time it takes place in is so tightly bounded by Revenge of the Sith and Clone Wars and Rogue One and A New Hope that Disney couldn't milk it forever. They were forced to actually plan on an ending instead of just trying to endlessly build a cinematic universe. Despite how unremarkable he is in Rogue One, this last scene in Andor of Cassian cheesily slow-mo walking to his ship in the outfit he's going to wear in the movie where he dies, having been transformed from this outlaw just trying to take care of himself into a rebel leader with like an actual conviction about the righteousness of his cause, it hits. So it's this very tangled knot of writing a beautiful beginning of a character's story after you've already written a somewhat underwhelming conclusion. If Disney's so keen on remaking movies 2 seconds after making them, I would be okay with a Rogue One remake that builds in Cassian as we see him in the show. I mean, you give him even a couple lines of dialogue as this tidal wave of fire is about to engulf him. Just a little something to close the loop on his character arc, to give him a moment of realization that even though he's burned his life, he's actually made the sunrise that he'll never see. I'd watch it. I sort of realized while writing this video that the movies that made my list this year aren't necessarily the best movies of 2025 as much as they are the movies that I thought about the most in 2025. So first I want to talk about a few movies that were very well received this year but that didn't really build a nest in my brain like some others. One battle after another. I've seen people calling this their favorite movie of the year, and I really did like it, but I don't know, it just didn't stick with me all that much. It has such a fun momentum to it. Like, Leonardo DiCaprio is constantly getting swept along in all these side quests while he's just trying to make sure his daughter is okay. He gives an absolute beast of a performance, like incredibly funny, but also with so much palpable concern for his daughter, and a little bit of wistfulness whenever he talks about his wife. I hate Sean Penn and his stupid little walk. What a viscerally unpleasant character. Great actor, though. Weapons probably had the coolest plot structure of any horror movie this year. Seeing all these different POVs at different points on the timeline gives a sketch of the story that gets filled in very gradually, and then finally when the movie is ready for its grand reveal, Alex's story. And you go, oh shit, all my questions will be answered. Amy Madigan was kinda awesome in this. I hope we see a career renaissance as a result. I feel like there's a White Lotus season that she would absolutely destroy. Sinners was an incredibly fun movie to watch. Having a great soundtrack is such a cheat code to making your movie more impactful that I feel like a lot of movies do not avail themselves of. But in fairness, most movies do not have access to Ludwig Göransson. This dude continues to solidify himself as an absolute musical visionary. But at the same time, you obviously don't have this movie at all without Ryan Coogler. Such a distinct vision, this very unique setting, and the blending of so many different genres. This movie has so much human soul in it. Very excited for whatever he does next. Oh, it's Black Panther 3? Cool. Oh wait. Denzel Washington villain? Black Panther 3 will be the greatest feature film. But all of my cinematic adventures this year pale in comparison to my greatest treasure. There's a used DVD and video game store near where I live, and as an enjoyer of strange and terrible movies, there's really nowhere better to peruse. The thing about sifting through the fields of pre-owned DVDs is that you have the chance to find something that few people in this world ever get to see. Some hand-distributed DVD that cannot be bought at Best Buy, that cannot be bought on Amazon, that only makes itself available to you at these crossroads of chance and fate. I knew I had found it as soon as I saw the crusted-on stain on the back, which I'm really hoping is barbecue sauce, because I've touched it several times. Ladies and gentlemen, Shredding Repis on the Gnar Rad. That's the title of the movie. So from a sound design perspective, we're already looking at a 10. So immediately you find out that it's not a movie as I had hoped, it's a drumming tutorial taught by this guy, Brain. Sure. And I have just a couple questions.
In this next lesson, we're going to learn about go-go.
Do you think you could maybe go a little further away from the camera?
The first beat you're going to hear is what I consider the most basic go-go groove.
The thing about it is, this dude is so fucking good at the drums. I legitimately have so much admiration for the skill that's on display here. Not only is he just absurdly good at playing the drums, but he describes the techniques that he's demonstrating in such an analytical and approachable way. I think this dude might actually be a genius. Oh, what's that? Hello class, welcome to Drumming 233. Today we're going to be learning the up-down technique. I'm your professor, a volleyball with human teeth. 1 minute he's at the salad bar, describing with perfect lucidity the ideas he wants to talk about. The next,
play all of these strokes at a slow tempo.
Why are the volleyball's lips bloody? Did it just eat someone?
Stay relaxed, but keep your reflexes quick.
Because you're going to eat me if I fuck this up? Ah, this is the life. Eating anomalous brown loaf and drinking out of a chalice. Hey, why doesn't the mom get a chalice? She brought you the loaf. And you make her eat plain broth bowl? Brain, if you're out there, I want to thank you so much for making this. I actually do eventually want to learn how to play the drums, and once I master some of the basic techniques, I might actually use this DVD to get some of the more intermediate drills, because a lot of the stuff that he was showing seemed like very helpful. It will, of course, be years before I can master Brain's most advanced technique where he plays the craziest drum solo I've ever seen with 2 baguettes that someone handed to him. What a quality film. Wait. They never showed us how to shred Repis, either on or off the Gnar Rad. I want my $1.50 back. Okay, I've kept you waiting for the list. Let's do a lightning round real quick. The Damned was a solid Arctic horror movie very reminiscent of The Thing. Got absolutely no attention, but it was very cool. Sonic 3 the Hedgehog, Agent Stone gets cucked by Eggman's grandpa. The Fire Inside, very fun movie. Brian Tyree Henry gives a great performance, and it deviates from the typical sports movie by exploring how success doesn't always bring the rewards that you were promised. Love Hurts? What the fuck? Why were the fight scenes actually good? Why were even the disposable goons given kind of compelling character arcs? How did they get the property brother to do all the shit he does in this movie? Flushed Away? No, that didn't come out this year. Warfare, deeply unsettling, draws you in and just holds you there. The kind of movie where the whole theater just sat there for a minute or two after it was over. Honey Don't, Aubrey Plaza gives a career best performance, completely disappears into this character. The movie was unfortunately not as good. Juliet and Romeo. It's like Romeo and Juliet, but they don't die at the end so they can set up a sequel. Oh, you think I'm joking? I'm not joking. A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey, super underrated movie, such a beautiful color palette and a very unique plot structure, great performances. Why don't people like good movies? The Senior, look in the rulebook. It doesn't say a 59-year-old man can't play football. Good boy. I think this dog should win Best Actor. Look in the rulebook. Frankenstein. That midway POV shift was crazy. It just becomes an entirely different movie. Next year, I'm gonna have to watch all this dude's movies. The Running Man made like no money, even though it was better than all the summer blockbusters this year. Edgar Wright, keep doing you. Wake Up Dead Man was probably my favorite Knives Out movie and would most likely have made my list this year if it came out a little bit earlier in the year, but I need to watch it again and give it some time to decant. If I really like it, it'll show up on next year's list. The Strangers Chapter 2. After the disaster of last year's Chapter 1, I discovered they had filmed a trilogy back to back to back, and I could not pass up the opportunity to see if it was worse. The first half hour of the movie, I was doubting my decision. She's just wandering around this hospital getting spooked by guys who pop out at her and then just leave. I was like, why, oh, why did I do this? But then she gets attacked by a wild boar. Chapter 3 is scheduled for February. I cannot wait to see how they close this out. Smurfs. There was a bar trivia night this spring where a friend of mine found a way to bet on whether the Rotten Tomatoes score of this movie would be over or under 35, and I said, 35 for a movie with this stylish animation? Nah, they got Rihanna. They'll put a few fun songs in there and make sort of like a Super Mario Bros. Movie knockoff. That'll be at least passable. Wrong. One of those movies where your forehead is just resting on your hand the entire time. Nothing plot. James Corden main character. Rihanna asleep in the recording booth. The dad sitting next to me at one point took a picture of the screen and texted it to someone. Was he bragging? Right now, studios think that kids' movies need to be more cinematic. Dogman is yet another example of how we need more kids' movies that are fun. This movie isn't trying to take your breath away with its sweeping IMAX visuals or realistic fur textures. It's relishing in its incredibly goofy and fun animation style. This movie is funny, heartwarming, and cool to look at. And that's all you need from a kids movie. I was a rabid fan of Captain Underpants as a kid, and this movie captures Dav Pilkey's style of humor exceptionally well. All the details on the billboards and the storefronts, the over-the-top rhythm of all the bits getting shot out of a cannon at you, the title cards that flash for like half a second to make it feel more like a kid's comic book, and also Pete Davidson actually acts in this movie, which is not always a guarantee.
I'm the biggest dog around, the greatest Dane in the whole darn town, but my family doesn't understand. I gotta eat, it's my command.
Live action remakes are too profitable to stop existing, but all I hope is that there continue to be some people at these animation studios who understand that a movie like this has so much more staying power than a movie like this. The second I stepped out of the theater on this, all my memories of it receded underneath my memories of the original. By contrast, you're never gonna erase from my mind the part of this movie where they crawl out of a robot mailman's ass crack. Opus is a movie I hemmed and hawed about including on this list, but after rewatching it at the end of the year, I confirmed that it is good. It's beautifully shot with a lot of very striking images and a very saturated color palette full of blue, red, and yellow. A horror movie about a journalist who travels to the compound of a former pop star who has built a cult around himself. It caught my attention early in the year for the way it tries to pick apart themes of charismatic leadership and cultural obsession with celebrity. Honestly, my issue with it is that it kind of tries to tackle way too much to the point that it doesn't really delve super deep into any one idea. I also wish the ending made 14% more sense, but John Malkovich gives an insanely good performance, Ayo Edebiri is great as usual, and the music goes kinda hard. They knew if they were gonna tell a story about a legendary pop star, the songs had to fit the vibe. As a horror movie, Opus's tendency to bounce around all over the place ends up working in its favor because you genuinely do not know what could happen at any given point. One second, John Malkovich is gyrating all over these guys, and then Armand from the White Lotus gets shot with a bow and arrow, and you're like, yes, very interesting. And then they bring out the diseased rat puppets made from human skin. A gay couple on the verge of adopting their first kid go on a romantic vacation in Italy and accidentally murder a surprising number of people. This is the rough outline of I Don't Understand You. Nick Kroll and Andrew Reynolds' chemistry makes this entire movie. It's frequently hilarious, but also kind of emotional at certain points, but it never loses that darkly comedic undertone. It's full of buffoonery and misunderstanding, sort of like a Shakespearean comedy of errors. Except I don't think Shakespeare ever made two gay guys push an old woman down the stairs. Or maybe it happened in Measure for Measure and I just forgot. The thing about Highest to Lowest that keeps sticking out to me is the way it completely pulls you into the moral choice the characters are faced with. Denzel Washington plays a legendary music producer on a mission to revitalize his failing record label when he gets a call telling him his son has been kidnapped and is being held for ransom for $17.5 million. In that moment, the choices he has are give up his dream of repurchasing his record label or let his son die, which is not even a choice. But as soon as it becomes a mix-up, as soon as we learn that it's actually his friend's kid, somehow it is a choice now, and the amount that's being demanded is so precisely calibrated to make it a moral problem. Like $1 million, Denzel probably doesn't even blink. But $17.5 million, enough to permanently end his dream of revitalizing this thing he worked his whole life on. The idealist in me is like, no, you pay whatever you have to save this kid's life. But it's not fucking easy. This decision grounds the character. It lets him flirt with behaving immorally without letting you hate him for it. I just thought it was cool how much was communicated about this character by forcing him to make this choice. I loved the atmosphere this movie very meticulously creates. Spike Lee seems to choose very particular vibes and music choices for his movies, but this movie had to be a celebration of music. Music is so inherent to who these characters are that you can't get away with a bland or forgettable soundtrack. All the James Brown songs that get dropped in at various points are like perfectly tuned to the vibe. The music swirls around the story of rivalry between Denzel and A$AP Rocky. You wait the whole movie for a confrontation between these two, and it boils over into this like rap battle in the studio? That's sick as hell! Feel-good movies are not typically my favorite because I tend to find cheesy and it all worked out in the end stories to be kind of predictable and not super interesting. So when Neon marketed The Life of Chuck as a life-affirming masterpiece, I wasn't quite sure what tone they were promising. The trailer for this movie doesn't really reveal anything about what the movie's about, so I was skeptical, but Neon has been consistently putting out weird, interesting shit, so I figured, why not? And having seen it, I think it was actually impossible to advertise this movie. I can't really give you a summary without spoiling the story, and I can't really define its genre. The closest I could say would be optimistic sci-fi, but it's extremely well cast and well acted, the camera work is beautiful, and the ideas it explores are fascinating. It takes a second to get used to the tone. It feels kind of like someone reading a book to you, but once you become acclimated to that, it gets easier to sink into it. The Life of Chuck includes several references to the TV show Cosmos, which I also watched for the first time this year. In the very first episode of the show, Carl Sagan explains that if the life of the universe were a calendar year, the first humans came into being at around 10:30 p.m. on December 31st. Everything our species has accomplished can be condensed into just a microscopic fraction of all time and space. Carl Sagan's view of the universe, awed and mystified by its unimaginable scale, beauty, and complexity, permeates this movie, with Cosmos and the cosmic calendar being directly discussed and explored at certain points. It's rare to watch a movie with an overall vibe like this one, unafraid to explore the shittiness and tragedies we encounter in life, but always appreciative of the small beauties we find too. It's a high-concept sci-fi, a human drama, and a ghost story. If all of this has sounded tantalizingly vague, you just gotta watch this movie and find out. Wes Anderson is always on some weird shit, but his last weird shit, Asteroid City, was completely incomprehensible to me. I gave it another try this year, and I still don't get it. I don't understand the three nested subplots about the actor. I don't understand why they're chanting, "You can't wake up if you don't fall asleep." Wes Anderson, I need you to come explain this to my baboon mind. The Phoenician Scheme is a Wes Anderson exploration of some similar themes as Asteroid City: purpose and meaning, Tom Hanks, a slight critique of religion. But the Phoenician Scheme grounds these themes in a story about a father and a daughter, both equipped with ironclad philosophies and stubborn dispositions, and both mellowed out a little as the story pushes them together. It never lingers for too long on a serious discussion of its philosophies, brushing us from one wacky character to the next and making the effortless transition from Michael Cera to Michael Cera parentheses hot. Its energy is very breezy, like Fantastic Mr. Fox, but it finds a few moments to bring in the quiet emotional gravity of the Grand Budapest Hotel. Frankly, I was just surprised that he made Benedict Cumberbatch look even scarier than usual. I'm not a cringe comedy guy by any means. I barely made it through the Scott's Tots episode of The Office, and I refuse to do it ever again. But Friendship's brand of cringe comedy goes far beyond Michael Scott. The theater audience on this one, people were making audible sounds of dismay. If you put some sort of listening device in that theater, you'd have thought they were making us watch a 2-hour guy gets whacked in the balls with a big shovel compilation. This movie physically hurts to watch. Underneath all the painful social interactions, there is a very intriguing commentary on male vulnerability, on the depths of embarrassment that a certain kind of man will sink to in the process of trying to avoid embarrassment. Craig just wants to be liked, desperately, by everyone he meets. But he spends so much time worrying about what everyone else thinks of him that he ends up alienating every single person in his life. His wife, his kid, even Paul Rudd. And that's the worst fate of all. There are so many tiny jokes crammed into this movie that you're constantly shifting between nauseating cringe and the most out-of-pocket one-liners you've ever heard. I've been laughing since May at this part where he goes to Subway. This is the perfect movie to watch on a plane. You're physically strapped to a chair, which should minimize your convulsions, and you can't run screaming out of the room. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to focus every fiber of my being on permanently forgetting this scene where he eats a bar of soap in front of 15 strangers. If you pick a random fictional marriage out of a hat, chances are it's pretty bad. I mean, there's nothing worse than the old ball and chain, am I right, fellas? The reason for this is that conflict in relationships is more entertaining than harmony. But when you find ways to introduce conflict in a good marriage, despite the affection and respect the spouses have for each other, that's when the shit gets interesting. Enter Black Bag, a spy thriller about a husband investigating a potential traitor inside a spy agency whose wife is at the top of the list of suspects. Black Bag opens by introducing you to its central couple, showing the delicate balance they have of keeping secrets while trying to stay honest with each other, demonstrating their enjoyment of people watching, of picking apart all the less stable relationships around them. It's hard to write conflict between a husband and a wife without kneecapping one of them, without making one of them the instigator or the dishonest one. But if you can thread all those needles, if you can make them both likable, make their bond visible, and create tension without destroying one of them, you get one of the sleekest, smartest spy thrillers I've ever seen. Black Bag's characters are all professional liars, and the moment that creates the most excitement isn't watching a Russian defector get drone-striked as he tries to cause a catastrophic nuclear meltdown. It's watching carefully constructed lies get picked apart by a man hell-bent on uncovering whether the person he trusts most has been lying to him, or whether someone is trying to make him think that she is. The tragedy of this movie is that it made no money. Steven Soderbergh was, I think, accurately annoyed by this. This wasn't some over-enthusiastic, IP-driven cash grab with an overinflated budget that failed to break even because the budget was overinflated. $50 million. A mid-budget spy thriller starring Michael Fassbender, Cate Blanchett, and Pierce Brosnan, and it still didn't make its budget back. What does that mean for the person who wants to make this kind of movie who didn't make Ocean's 11 first? Soderbergh's frustration stemmed from the fact that this is the kind of movie that he made his career on. It used to be a lot easier for studios to take chances on these middle-budget movies, but the streaming age has imbued studios with a singular focus on milking existing IP with these massively budgeted spectacle movies, and it's completely changed the landscape of what movies can be successful. Now for an audience to leave their house and go to a theater, a movie either has to tap into an existing franchise or become a trendy cultural experience that percolates through social media, creating FOMO for people who don't see it. And that leaves great movies that aren't flashy, like Black Bag, kind of out in the cold. The substance is nasty. Even on a rewatch, there are parts of this movie where you have to focus on anything but the images on the screen. But this movie has a completely unique vibe. Every shot is just beautifully put together. There's so much contrast with these really saturated colors that your eyes always gravitate naturally to the most interesting thing in frame. The soundtrack has that sort of Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross EDM groove to it, but can transform on a dime into this chaotic, dissonant nightmare. As a horror movie, it rarely takes the time to actually scare you, choosing instead to focus most of its efforts on grossing you out. There's so much viscera, not just in shots of grotesquely mutated bodies, but in scenes where characters eat and breathe. The sound design makes every squish and slosh feel like it's right next to your ears. Most of the shit wouldn't be half as disgusting if there wasn't a guy emptying a lava lamp into your headphones while you watch it. But there are a handful of images that are extremely unsettling, and their relative rareness makes them stand out that much more. But that unsettling feeling never dominates the other vibes of the movie, and the ending gets almost comical, which is a nice change of pace from how bleak the rest of the movie is. Elizabeth Sparkle is such a great protagonist because without saying virtually anything in this movie, you understand how she feels at all times. You're made to feel how commodified she feels. Once she's seen how perfect she can be, it's like she can't ever be satisfied with herself again. This wordless scene of Elizabeth trying to feel good enough about herself to go out, and over again the billboard of Sue intrudes into her thoughts, and we end up back in front of the mirror. It crystallizes the feeling of worthlessness that led Elizabeth to use the substance in the first place. If this happened to me, I would have opened the package, seen how much injecting I was going to have to do for the rest of my life, and been like, I'm good. I'm not afraid of needles. Like, I can get a shot, no problem. But I gotta harvest cerebrospinal fluid from my own corpse every day? I think I'd rather just be old. Dating in 2025 seems like a goddamn nightmare. Every time I hear some horror story about some terrible Hinge-facilitated awkwardness, I'm filled with gratitude not to have to worry about that anymore. Of course, there's nothing worse than the old ball and chain, fellas. Am I right? But the thing about the ball and chain is that it is very snug and secure. That sense of security is the dream that everyone is chasing, although it means something slightly different to everyone. Materialist is a story about how much easier and more meaningless that chase is for rich people. You can just hire Dakota Johnson to find people for you to date. Lucy works as a matchmaker, helping her wealthy clients find someone who checks all their boxes. And the movie spends a lot of time examining how dehumanizing that view of dating is. There's so much discussion of value, of what makes a person worth more in the dating market. For women, it's age and physical attractiveness. We see Lucy's male clients completely write off the possibility of having a fruitful relationship with a woman over the age of 30. For men, it's money and height. The apex of this movie is a discussion with Pedro Pascal's character about how he spent $200,000 on limb lengthening surgery, which is a real thing you can get.
Changed our lives. With women, completely, of course. Women just approach us and talk to us now, which never happened before. I haven't struck out since. But you can also tell the difference at work, and at restaurants, and airports. You're just worth more.
This man was already rich. This man already looked like Pedro Pascal, but he still found it necessary to break both his tibias so they could regrow longer so he would be more valued by women. If this outlook on relationships sounds horrifying to you, yeah, that's the point. You're not meant to empathize with any of these people. You're barely meant to empathize with Dakota Johnson. You're meant to empathize with Chris Evans, the down-on-his-luck wannabe actor hopelessly in love with Lucy who, just so happens to also be overwhelmingly physically attractive, which is helpful in situations where you're trying to woo Dakota Johnson. For a movie with a pretty standard love triangle rom-com structure, it ends up exploring some very unique themes in some very unique ways. Come for the interesting characters, stay for the depressing realization that there are real people who view love this way. Celine Song, the writer-director, used to do this actual job. Crazy. In the internet age, it's extremely easy to get sucked into a content rabbit hole and come out the other side feeling like you know what you're talking about, even if you got all your information from bignuggetnews.com. How do you convince someone that the thing they've been repeatedly told is true isn't? This is Bugonia's central concern. The key to brainwashing someone isn't just feeding them a comforting and convenient lie. It's telling them that any other source of information is part of an evil conspiracy to mislead them. You don't just get them to drink the Kool-Aid, you tell them if they're gullible enough to drink Meyer raspberry lemonade artificially flavored drink mix instead, well, that's exactly what the globalist lizard person cabal wants them to drink. You've heard of feel-good movies? Prepare yourself for Yorgos Lanthimos' signature feel-bad movie experience. There's just enough humanity in Todd from Breaking Bad that you actually feel a sliver of empathy despite the fact that he kidnaps and beats this woman because he's done all the research and concluded she's an Andromedan foot soldier sent to eliminate humanity. You don't want to feel anything for him, but once you see what he had to go through and, more importantly, how his undeveloped child brain interpreted what he had to go through, you can't help but kind of get it. But then that feeling of pity is swirling around next to a boiling anger at the way he's completely hypnotized Don. Because that's the real secret of these kinds of conspiracies. They prey upon the most trusting and vulnerable minds to propagate. Every actor in this movie gives an incredible performance. Emma Stone's subtle shift from superiority and irritation to fear of being physically attacked confirms that she is easily one of the most talented actors currently working. Jesse Plemons continues to take on weirder and weirder roles and consistently nails all of them. Aidan Delbus gives a heartbreakingly sad performance that is very much the emotional core of this movie. Just a crazy good cast. The theater audience on this one was locked in. Everybody who came to see Bugonia knew why they were there and what they were in for. Nary a phone in sight. It was beautiful. And there were so many moments where you could palpably feel the energy in the theater shift. Don starts talking about wanting to go to space and needing to say bye to Teddy first, and you could feel a collective uncertainty, like, uh-oh. And then he raises the shotgun to his chin and you get this group inhale. Sometimes it's really fun to experience these wild-ass movies with a bunch of strangers in the dark. You gotta see this movie for the first time relatively unspoiled, but I want to talk about the ending, so consider this your 5-second warning to go watch the movie and then come back. Okay, everybody gone? She was an alien the whole time? What the fuck? What does this mean for the themes of the movie? Should we actually be trusting bignuggetnews.com? I had a sneaking suspicion this would be the twist at the end, but it's not just thrown in for what the fuck points. It takes the sweeping ideas of a grand explanation for humanity's woes and flips it on its head. If there was some higher form of life that designed us for a purpose, maybe we're a total disappointment to it. The movie's constant discussion of bees and the ending shot of this bee hovering around a flower suggests that in the aftermath of a human extinction, maybe the next species to evolve intelligence would be one with a better understanding of its own place in the world. The bottom line is there are very few filmmakers operating at this level of stylishness and originality. Next year we might have to marathon all of Yorgos' movies to see if we can find some hidden gems. There are a lot of fears that you can run from. Neurological decline is not one of them. There is perhaps nothing scarier than the thought of being trapped in your own body, your mind slowly dissolving into chaotic noise. The rule of Jenny Penn takes those fears of aging, of dementia and mental degradation, and applies them to the proudest, most arrogant asshole you'd ever find in a nursing home. At the start of this movie, Stefan is positive he's going to recover from his stroke and return to his job, which he loves. He's a judge, and judgment is something he relishes. He sees himself as the barrier between the world's predators and its prey. So when he finds himself in a nursing home whose occupants are terrorized by a sociopathic resident wielding a baby puppet, he takes it upon himself to oppose this man. The other residents have learned to cower in fear, to just give this guy whatever he wants. But Stefan is just too stubborn, too idealistic. And that tension grows thicker as Stefan's mind proves to be less resilient than his willpower. This sequence of Stefan being diagnosed with Alzheimer's over an unknown stretch of time is heartbreaking, even for a character who's such a dick. And as his reality blurs, the movie delights in keeping things suggestively vague. The first time I saw this movie, I was sure for like 2/3 of it that he was actually dead and in hell. The staff of this nursing home is suspiciously absent at every crucial moment. Patients are allowed to aimlessly wander the halls at night. The outside world barely intrudes into their lives, making them feel totally helpless and isolated. The one thing about this movie is that it feels like it ends like 4 separate times. You think it's done and then the shit just keeps going. But over the course of all of that, you witness this almost primordial showdown between these elderly embodiments of order and chaos. The rule of Jenny Penn is laser locked onto the tone it wants to set, and that focus means the feeling sticks with you for weeks after you finished it. For all the non-horror people in my life, of which I know dishearteningly many, you can watch this one. 0 jump scares, just dark, atmospheric storytelling. You don't have to look far to find people who claim to be able to make contact with the dead. Psychics and mediums, Ouija boards, seances. Our culture overflows with ways to cross the barrier between life and afterlife. What these methods have in common is that they are relatively cheap for what's being promised, in exchange of money and in return, communication with the dead. But what if you found a way to do more than speak with the dead? What if, against all odds, you could perform a dark and twisted ritual that would return someone to you? The price might be higher, but if your longing for them was strong enough, you would pay any cost. In a year full of great horror movies, Bring Her Back stands out as an incredible blend of empathy and disgust, terror and unfulfilled longing. To me, it shows that when this genre is done right, it can play with our emotions in ways that no other kind of art can. Horror as a genre is thriving right now, but there continues to be this massive divide between the name brand horror franchises and all the actually good horror movies I saw this year. Before I spend 20 minutes shitting on studio horror, I will acknowledge one that actually worked. Black Phone 2? Oh, I was skeptical. I was prepared to hate this movie, but it's actually kinda fun. One of the weirdest mixed bags of the year by far. Sometimes the theater audience was laughing at the jokes, and other times they were laughing at the dialogue. But these dream sequences were so stylishly put together, it was impossible not to appreciate this movie at least a little bit. My main takeaway was that they should have let these guys make the FNAF movie. This movie had the exact analog horror feel for a story about dead kid ghosts. But Black Phone 2 was a pretty big exception to the general rule that the mainstream horror of 2025 was terrible. Wolfman. Fucking nothing happens in this movie. They're just sitting around in the dark waiting for this guy to slowly transform into a werewolf. The woman in the yard. A woman shows up in their yard. Final Destination Bloodlines. This whole movie seemed like it was written around this Tony Todd cameo, but I had never seen any of the other ones, so this did nothing for me. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Megan 2.0, The Conjuring Last Rites, The Strangers Chapter 2. Horror franchises continue to stumble forward like unkillable zombies, keeping budgets low enough that even box office failure won't keep them down for long. But even as the bigger franchises continue to squeeze out horror sludge, we are experiencing an absolute renaissance of indie horror. It's hard to pick out one starting point. If I had to, probably Hereditary. Ari Aster's style of slow burn terror is like the flagship for the fleet of new good horror movies. The success of Longlegs last year was also an indicator that horror is diverging, and it's gotten to the point where I go into different kinds of horror movies with wildly different expectations. Studio horror is basically like going on a roller coaster. There's nothing subtle, there's nothing psychological. You strap in and they throw you around for a little while. Studio horror is almost entirely jump scare based. The rhythm of it has become so predictable it's hard for it to even affect you after you've seen enough of them. These kinds of movies are regularly very profitable, so there must still be a core audience that likes that experience, but in my opinion, a jump scare is only good if you actually show me something scary. A lot of studio horror jump scares just play a loud noise over like random footage. My favorite one is from The Strangers Chapter 1. We fully saw that guy for 2 entire seconds before the man with the violin sneaked up behind us and stabbed us in the ears. That wasn't scary, it was just surprising. Those kinds of scares fade before you get back to your car. The shit that sticks with you for multiple days and makes you paranoidly look over your shoulder every 10 seconds, that's dread. And that's what you'll find in most of the indie horrors being put out by Shudder, A24, and Neon. These movies understand that they don't need to flashbang you to put you on edge. It's much scarier if what you see for most of the movie isn't inherently terrifying, but somehow creates the feeling that something is wrong. That's not to say that there are no jump scares in these movies. A jump scare can be a powerful tool that serves as punctuation to a creepy, dread-laden scene. Bring Her Back is such a great example of how to do this right. There are a few jump scares in this movie, but the engine of its horror is a slow build, making you feel like something awful is brewing in the background. They arrive at Sally Hawkins' house, and she's like so welcoming to Piper and so energetic, but you see the total indifference she treats Andy with, and you see Oliver, and you see her taxidermy dog, and you go, huh. And only an hour later is she actively trying to murder them. That dissonance, the everything should be okay but somehow I know it isn't, is how you really unsettle your audience. Sally Hawkins gives easily one of the best performances of the year. She's able to convey this longing, this desperation to be with her daughter again. You're always rooting against her, but it's also like, imagine you go through all that disgusting shit and it actually works, and you're right there. You just have to do this one more fucked up thing and you can actually have this person back. There's a calmness to her performance that makes it so unsettling. A calculating nature. And when that air of calmness slips, when it becomes clear she's playing with forces completely beyond her control, that's when the movie unleashes its most fucked up tricks. Jonah Wren Phillips, holy shit. An absolute powerhouse performance. This kid is terrifying and sad and unknowable all at the same time. Like, this movie would not work at all unless you found a kid who could sell this, but they did. And it's just a gauntlet of psychic pain. You watch a kid get a concussion. You watch a kid chew on a knife. You watch a kid break his teeth off on this dining room table. It's like dropping your eyes into an active war zone. Where studio horror continues to be powered mostly by endlessly milking old franchises, which is why we're getting Scream 7 next year, indie horror is powering itself with original ideas. Not just in the stories they tell, but also in how they're marketing these movies. In a trailer landscape where it feels like the studios are so desperate for your eyes, they just show you the entire movie in the trailer, indie horror has re-embraced the notion of the tease. Longlegs showed that it's a lot easier to boost the cultural impact of your movie if you're willing to hold some stuff back, to drip feed your audience just enough to get a sense of the vibe of your movie, and maybe a rough sketch of the kind of story you're going to tell. Bring Her Back's trailer barely gives you any of its story, showing just like a couple creepy images and sounds, but conveying the feeling it's going to instill in you. In a movie landscape dominated by mega-budget, pre-existing IP, indie horror is the glimmer of hope that this art form can still revitalize itself by remembering the spark of originality and creativity that makes it so fun in the first place. History is full of people who thought they were living in the end times. All of them have been wrong so far, but that same feeling has begun to trickle into our culture. One facet of this is that we're becoming more and more infused with nuclear anxiety. Oppenheimer is, of course, one expression of this, but as more and more writers and directors who grew up during the height of the Cold War ruminate on their childhood experiences of hiding under desks, questions about nuclear weapons continue to proliferate onto our screens. Unlike Oppenheimer, which explores the creation myth of the nuclear bomb, A House of Dynamite sets its sights on a present-day apocalypse scenario. What would happen if a single unattributed nuclear missile was launched at the United States? With no certain enemy to retaliate against, how would we respond? 20 minutes. That's how long America has to make a decision, as the missile burns across the sky towards Chicago. And the movie explores those 20 minutes 3 times, from 3 different perspectives. It first zooms out, showing you the breadth of America's military and intelligence network, showing the numerous individuals who get up every day and leave their homes and families to help shield the rest of us from Armageddon, showing how sophisticated and complex our network of defense is. And then it asks you to consider what it would look like for all that sophistication to fail. The movie then zooms in, giving a window into the frantic phone calls and text messages that bounce around as intelligence officials try to make contact with their foreign counterparts, desperately trying to ascertain what's going on. And it ends by asking some basic but piercing questions about the qualities we should be prioritizing in a leader. I think this is by far the most political movie of 2025, and it does it without ever explicitly stating its point of view. For the first 2 acts of this movie, this giant government Zoom call is up on the wall. Officials scramble to get a scrap of information, anything that can pass up the chain to inform the decisions that have to be made. And all the while, a blank square sits in the top left, labeled POTUS. the person who, at the end of it all, is going to have to choose. We barely hear from him for 2/3 of the movie. Just a word of confusion or irritation here and there as officials on the ground frantically weigh the options. And inevitably, your mind starts filling that empty square with people. Would I trust this person to make this decision? Would I have trusted that one either? And when the movie finally reveals this person, he's not a caricature of any recent president or some sort of fantasy ideal of a perfect leader. He seems to be a pretty standard politician. And as this person is forced to consider whether to sit still and watch the second largest American city get incinerated or fire back and potentially kill everyone on the planet, you realize that everything you've seen so far, all the infrastructure, all the military intelligence, the interceptor missiles, when it comes down to it, all these things are subordinate to one person. We've grown used to seeing the president at so many different cultural or ceremonial events, throwing out first pitches, speaking at ribbon cuttings, or doing charity events with kids. But at any moment, they could have to sprint away to make the hardest choice anyone on Earth could possibly be faced with. It's not enough to be a ceremonial figurehead or some kind of protest vote expression of discontent with the establishment. In a moment like that, we'll need a leader with the capacity to think critically, to make deliberate, morally and philosophically grounded decisions. A leader that, terrifyingly, we have to choose. The last safety valve against our own destruction is us.
So it's a little heavier feel to me. That's what I like about it. That's why I kind of picked up on it.
If you stuck around all the way past the end card, congratulations, you found this secret post-credits scene. Thank you for watching this far, or if you just left your phone on because you were using this video for background noise while you were in the shower, how's it going in there? You need any help? I just wanted to include a little segment giving kind of like an end-of-year update on the channel. It was not a super eventful year from like a new milestones achieved perspective. We started the year at 3573 subscribers, and we ended the year at 3865. Most of the new folks are from the Rick and Morty video that I made like almost 2 years ago that just blew up when the new season came out, which was awesome. I've never had a video do okay when it's published and then slowly creep up like that, but now it's at like over 100,000 views, which, you know, that's not insane or anything, but it's the second highest performing video on this channel. Big shout out to the Rick and Morty fan base for leaving all these comments. I really enjoy waking up every morning and reading these. I want you guys to know that I read every single one, even the ones casting aspersions on my intelligence and sexuality. Especially those ones. They fuel me. Some of you have some absolutely garbage takes on this show. Some of you wanted me to make a video about season 8, and I'm not going to do that. My one source that actually watched the new season indicated it's not worth wasting my time on, and I also have a bad habit of like fully articulating why I don't like something or why I think it's bad, and then continuing to waste my time on it. I'm looking at you, The Flash, and I'm not going to do that with this show. Maybe in like 10 years after it's been canceled, I'll go back and make a video about all the seasons I missed. It was kind of an emotional roller coaster between the end of last year and this year. If you had gauged my enthusiasm for YouTube at the end of last year, it was at its peak. I had just spent a few months working super hard on the IGN video, and it blew up like none of my videos have before, and I was just super enthusiastic. I was so fired up about some of the projects that I had in mind to follow up on that this year, but then it was just sort of a constant stream of underperformances. I had one video break 1,000 views this year, and I was super disappointed that these two didn't do any better considering that I put like full months of effort into them. And I thought they were pretty good. I didn't want this segment of the video to be like, oh, woe is me, I'll never be good at YouTube. But at the same time, I feel like part of what makes this hobby fun is that it serves as a record of what I'm thinking and feeling as the years go by. And this was a somewhat frustrating year to post stuff on this platform. On the one hand, I do legitimately feel like I get better every time I make a video. I get faster at editing. I've started to be able to write a script and hear how it's going to sound in my recording voice. On the other hand, you make some smaller videos and they do absolutely nothing, and so you go, okay, I'm locking in, and you spend months painstakingly crafting something that you're super passionate about, and you put that out there, and it kinda also does nothing. But before I can even wade in that self-pity for too long, you watch a video that you posted a week ago that you thought was like the best thing you've ever made, and you go, oh, there's like 4 things in here that I can definitely do better next time. At the end of the day, there is no rush to gain subscribers or grow this channel or anything like that. I just have to keep grinding and keep getting better, and whatever happens, happens. I do think that one thing that is keeping this channel from doing better is that I'm not very consistent with the kinds of videos that I make, because I just write about whatever I'm thinking about every month. But when you bounce around between different kinds of videos, you don't really build a community of people all interested in one thing. My most watched video is still the IGN video, and I haven't really made any other video essays about games journalism or the games industry, and I probably won't. So someone who watched that video and liked it then got served superhero movie reviews and a video essay about the second season of a TV show that came out 20 years years ago, and videos of me and my wife making fun of bad movies. So that person probably stopped caring what I posted like a year ago. On the one hand, I'm not going to build my channel around what's algorithmically preferred. If there's one truism that everybody who seems to be good at YouTube likes to repeat, it's that you got to make the videos that you want to see. But also, there may be an extent to which the kinds of videos that I like to make just have no chance of doing well until my channel is a little bit more well-known. Like, Drew Gooden can put out a video where he makes fun of some, like, terrible, obscure piece of media, and it'll get a ton of views because people go, oh, this is going to be great. I can't wait to see what Drew has to say about this weird, niche piece of media. It's not that they were clamoring for an in-depth review of Daddy Can't Dance. But it's hard to get to that point without any kind of consistency that returning viewers can rely on. So my New Year's resolution for 2026 is to be slightly more consistent with the kinds of videos I'm putting out. I think the most manageable way to do that is going to be to talk about some of the hidden gems I find at the movie theater in 2026, because if I had to pick a unifying theme for this channel, it would very much be an appreciation of movies. My other New Year's resolution for the channel is to be a little bit more disciplined about actually sitting down and editing videos instead of wasting my free time. Editing is by far my least favorite part of the creative process right now. I feel like I'm naturally pretty good at writing and performing my videos, but I have no natural talent for editing at all. I'm getting better. I keep telling myself I'm going to take a YouTube course on DaVinci Resolve and learn all the ins and outs, and then I don't. So because it's the least enjoyable part for me, the production process of a video is like excitedly write a video, excitedly carve out time to film a video, and then slog through the editing. Because after I come home from work, I sit down on my computer, it's like, yeah, I could edit a video, but I'm just gonna play one game of TFT first. Oh, it's dinner time now. Okay, I guess I'll get to it after dinner. And then you finish dinner and it's like, I've had a long day. Don't I deserve a break? I just need an hour to decompress. Oh, it's bedtime now. Guess I'll do that tomorrow. And then I always wish I had more time to work on my videos. And the even stupider part is that when I actually do sit down and force myself to edit videos, I do kind of have fun, in like a menial chore kind of a way. So in 2026, I'm gonna lock in. I'm gonna get past this psychological aversion to editing videos and become a one-man assembly line that churns out high-quality shit that sets the internet on fire. I just gotta play one game of TFT first. Yeah, I didn't really have a point to this part of the video. I just wanted to give a little update on the channel, and I felt like there's probably some other small creators out there who might appreciate the feeling that their struggles are not unique to them. I'm not trying to sound whiny or self-pitying like, this is so hard. I've been doing this for more than 3 years now, and I still love it. I still look forward to working on videos every single day. Even though I promise I'm going to be a little bit more consistent with what I put out next year, I do have like 5 entire video ideas in 5 totally different directions that I'm super excited to work on. If you made it this far, thank you for spending the better part of an hour with me. I hope to be able to lure you in again in the new year. Thank you to anybody who told me in person this year that they liked a video I made, or who left a comment on a video I made, or who just watched a video I made. I appreciate you wasting your time with me, and I will see you back here in like a couple weeks. Okay, bye.